Hello everyone, Top Hat Waffle here, and we're going to continue working on our Counter-Strike Go competitive level. To start out, like always, we go to the Tools section in Steam and load the Counter-Strike Global Offensive SDK. Once that's loaded, we load Hammer World Editor, and then we go to File and load our level. Today we're going to learn about props. Props are essentially models that can be placed throughout your level to add extra detail and provide more immersion to your players. There's three main types of props that Counter-Strike Global Offensive uses. There's the prop static, which is a static object that never moves. A prop dynamic, which is an object that can move with an animation, or if it's tied to another object, which we'll end up covering later. And the prop physics, things like soda cans and milk crates, things that should be affected by physics in the world. Since prop static is the most common, let's start with placing a few prop statics in our level. I figured that this little overhang by T-Spawn would be sort of like a little park in an outside area. I figured we'll place a few benches and a tree here. Let's start by placing a happy little tree. Click the Entity tool or Shift E and then place a new entity. Double click on it and change its class to prop_static. Click Apply and the terrorist model will disappear and we'll be left with a red box. Under Key Values, find World Model and click Browse. This will bring up the model browser. If you open the model browser and it does not render correctly or is unresponsive, this is a bug with the model browser and you need to just close it and reopen it. Let's take a quick tour around the model browser so we know what we're working with. Up in the top left are all the folders where models and props can be stored. Typically, you want to make sure that MDL files is selected. If you accidentally click on another folder here, you'll only see what's inside of it, and this will make you believe that you have less props to work with than you actually do. At the bottom left is the list of props and our search results if we use the filter. On the top right, we have our viewport. We can navigate in the viewport by holding mouse 1 or mouse 2 to zoom in and out and pan. At the bottom right, we have our viewport controls and prop information. We can enable wireframe on the model, a collision model if it has one, disable the ground, or lock our view. The most useful of these is collision model if you're trying to place props that will be used for cover. Under sequences, we can see if a prop has different animations and what they can be set to. This will be used later for prop dynamic. If a model has multiple skins, such as colors and textures of doors, they'll be listed here. The Info tab will list any relevant information that we may need to know about the prop, such as if it can be used as a static prop, physics prop, or a dynamic prop, along with its mass and any other miscellaneous keys and values that the modeler has decided the prop should have. Let's do a filter search for tree. You can use the arrow keys to filter through your results until you find an object that you like. I've settled on Props Foliage Urban Street Tree 01. We can see that this prop is for use with static, and let's just check its collision model since it will be in playable area. The collision model looks pretty good, so let's just click OK, and then Apply. In our 3D Hammer viewport, we can see that the tree has been placed. Using our 2D views, we can reposition the tree to a spot that we like better. I think that looks pretty good. Now we can create our two park benches on the side here. It's much faster to grab this prop and shift drag to make a copy, and then just change the world model setting at the bottom. You can double click on world model to quickly open the model browser and do a search for bench. Once you find the model you want to use, click OK once again, and then position it in the world. I'm going to lower my grid size and then hold shift and use my arrow keys and nudge to quickly create a few copies of this bench. If the grid size isn't small enough, you can just undo, lower the grid size, and try it again. Now that I have a few copies made, I want to rotate it and make it go along this rail here. Left clicking on the prop once in a 2D view to enable the grab handles, and then just dragging and rotating, I can put the prop in place against the wall, lower the grid size once again, and then use Shift and my arrow key to quickly nudge a few copies into place. Let's replace this development cover box here with the crate from Nuke that allows us to use the render color to change the color of the prop. grabbing just the prop static in the level and shift dragging it over, open the object properties and click Browse. Do a search for crate. The prop that I'm looking for is under the HR Nuke folder and is called Metal Crate 00196. Click OK to select it, and then click Apply. Looking at the prop in the 3D view, we can see that it's all white. If we scroll down, we'll see Color RGB. If we select that, we'll see the current RGB color in use for this prop. If we choose Pick Color, we'll get the color picker. Let's tint this prop blue. As soon as we click OK, the prop will tint blue. Tinting props works with almost every model. If we create a copy of this and change the model to forklift, if we select the Nuke forklift base and then click OK and then apply, we'll see that the prop is tinted blue everywhere except for the wheels. This prop is missing the front of it. If we create one more copy and then click Browse, we'll see that there's the fork attachment on the front. Click OK and then apply, and then just move it back into place. Some props are considered a prop set in Counter-Strike and Source Engine altogether. This means that some models will use a collection of props. This can be for a variety of different reasons, such as shader differences and material differences in the props. Now that we have the forklift made, click Apply, and then close this out. Let's position this so the forklift is carrying this crate. If we turn Snap to Grid off, we'll be able to more finely and precisely move these props around. It's okay to turn Snap to Grid off when you're working with props. If we look at the bottom of this prop, there's these little tracks for where the forklift arms will go in. If we select the crate and the two forklift models, we can press Ctrl H to hide everything but the selected objects in our scene. This allows for much quicker editing of small details in your map. If we position our 3D views so we can make sure that the fork arms go into the prop, we can create a much more convincing level. With that set up how I want, we can press the U key on our keyboard to unhide everything. I'll delete this placeholder box, select all three of these objects, and move them into place. Now let's take a look at prop dynamic by having a crow sit at the base of the tree and eat. Creating a new entity with the Entity tool, double-click on it and change its class info to prop_dynamic. Click Apply, double-click on World Model, and search for Crow. We can see the Crow model here. If we go to Sequences, we can preview what animations it has. I want to use eat_A. Click OK, and then Apply. Scroll down until you find Default Animation, and then type in eat_A, and then click Apply. Once you click Apply, the animation in your 3D view should change to the animation that you set. Position the crow. Now that we have our crow positioned, he'll spawn and begin eating just like that. That's pretty much all there is to know with prop dynamics. They'll just animate, you set the animation, and they go. Now let's take a look at physics props. Creating a new entity, opening its object properties, and changing its class to prop_physics. Click Apply, and then double-click on World Model. Let's change our filter search to Paint. We can see that we have this paint bucket, and it's flagged to use for physics. We can see it has some extra information here, that it's a plastic medium object with a mass of 5. If we click OK and then Apply, we'll have our paint bucket appear in our 3D view. We can shift drag to make a few copies of these, and let's stack them on top of each other. Now, for comparison's sake, let's take a look at Prop Physics Multiplayer. If we shift drag this over and just change the class to Prop Physics Multiplayer, let's once again create a couple copies. Prop Physics Multiplayer is a physics object that's made to be used for multiplayer games. It's more optimized but cheaper, and in Counter-Strike Go, it pushes itself away from the player when we run into it. There's one more section that we should look at when it comes to physics props. If we select this whole stack here, and shift drag to create another copy, We can press Alt-Enter on our keyboard to open the object properties. We can see that we have multiple objects selected. If we go to the Flags tab, there's a few more options that we can use to our advantage to better configure these props. One of the main ones that you'll use for physics objects is debris. This makes them not collide with each other or the player. Let's enable debris so we can see how it looks on these props. If you're ever confused on what some of these flags do, you can always hit F1 to open the Valve Developer Wiki and then do a search on the entity. Once there, you can scroll down and there will be more information about the flags, but most of them are pretty self-explanatory. Click Apply and then X this out. Lastly, let's take a look at the override setting for props. If we come back to our park bench over here and click Browse, we can see that it does not have physics checked, meaning that it should not work with physics. If we create another copy of this prop over here, let's change its class to be a prop physics override. The override variant of this prop means that the game will force it to be a physics object, and it will create some of this information on the fly unless we specify it here. For now, I'll leave everything default. Most of these settings can just be fiddled with to better tweak your prop experience if you're using an override. Prop dynamic override also exists if you need a dynamic version of a prop that isn't currently dynamic. This will typically come into play later if you're using a static prop for a door and it's parented to an object. We'll cover parenting in a later video. Click Apply, close out of this, let's run our map to see what it looks like in game. If any of your props are completely black like pictured here, you've compiled using the normal compiler or the wrong lighting settings. Make sure that you choose the full compile HDR only preset found in the expert compiler menu. Once the game is loaded, press the tilde key to open the console, type map, space, your map name, and press enter. Once the map loads, join a team, and we can walk up and see our park benches, along with our different choices of props. We see that we have our tinted blue forklift and crate, our park benches, our crow that's eating, along with our tree. The difference between these paint buckets is that the ones on the left are multiplayer, the ones in the center are regular physics, and the ones on the right are regular physics with debris. If I try to run through the ones that have debris set, I don't collide with them, and they don't move or collide with each other. I can shoot them, but they do go right through each other, and they'll stack up in the corner. The regular physics ones, when I run into them, they feel pretty solid. I can also stand on them and shoot them around. They'll collide with each other, just like the objects should. The only downside to this is that sometimes you can get caught on the collision model of these objects. So if you decide to use a prop physics, you should make sure to test it and make sure that you can't get stuck on that certain prop's model. These are the prop physics multiplayers. If I run into these, they'll bounce away from me. They'll still collide with each other, but as soon as I touch them, they bounce and try to escape from me. I can still shoot them, but they feel overall lighter than the regular prop physics. You'll want to use prop physics multiplayers for things such as pop cans and milk crates on the ground, such as the one found at Long at Dusk 2. Over here is the prop physics override park bench. It fell over by itself when it spawned, but if I start pouring bullets into it, we can see that it moves slightly on the ground. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to join us in the next one, and stay frosty.